Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to another character spotlight for Marvel's Contest of Champions. Today we are talking about a pretty interesting character, and that is, I guess it's the classic version of Black Widow. It's not labeled as classic, but there are a couple of different versions, including some non-Natasha Romanoff variants of this character in the game. Well, one to be specific. But there's still a lot of interesting things to talk about with this particular character because there's some decent power behind them, but they used to be a lot better in terms of how they functioned before things were tweaked for game balance. But let's go ahead and start by looking at the base functions of the character like we always do. And just before we jump into that, make sure to check and see if you are subscribed to the channel. If you're not, go ahead and fix that real quick, as you will then have reminders of that daily variety content that I put out every single day. And if you find today's video helpful, interesting, and or enjoyable, make sure that you hit that like button. So Black Widow is a fairly straightforward character with a couple of unique quirks. The first item to be aware of, and this is even for when you're using the character as an attacker as opposed to facing off against them as a defender, is Black Widow has a 3% chance to automatically dodge incoming attacks. Now there are a couple of things that you can use to get around this. There is the vigilance buff that's fairly new. True accuracy is another one that works really well. And then there are debuffs that can be placed on opponents, such as slow, that will prevent opponents from dodging as well. So that's something that you do need to keep in mind when facing off against this character or when using this character, that there are certain items that can negate that evasion. On any given special attack, Black Widow has a 100% chance to activate both a precision and a cruelty buff, both of which have an 8-second duration and boost the critical damage as well as the rate of critical hits that she is capable of getting. And then on the special 3, the only special attack of hers that has an additional benefit, there is a 70% chance to stun for 3.5 seconds, which is pretty good because that allows you to rinse a full combo and then continue to attack into your opponents with a secondary combo, provided that you don't have to worry about their power meter and pushing them too far to the point where they would then retaliate against you. Now, Black Widow has a very unique signature ability in the form of Subtlety, and the reason that this character is no longer as great as they once were is because Subtlety has seen a nerf, or it's seen a change to the way that it functions. So Black Widow used to function by having a 100% chance to negate abilities that were active on her opponents, which was very, very strong. However, because this game is based around type matchups, there were a couple of changes and adjustments that were made to this character to make her not as efficient. So currently you can get her up to a 70% efficiency on that ability against any given character. However, you will see a 15% reduction in efficiency against mutant opponents and a 15% increase in that ability between science opponents. So depending on the matchup, you can have anywhere from a 55% efficiency to an 85% efficiency in the way that this ability functions. So I do understand the reason that it would have been kind of clocked and changed and made a little bit different, but it's still fairly useful in a wide variety of scenarios because you can help to shut down a lot of the more annoying features that some of the members of the cast do tend to have. Now, in terms of changes that I would like to see made to this character, I mean, she uses her stun bracelets, her Widow's Bite bracelets for her special 3, and since those do carry an electrical charge, I think that it would be fitting for her to deal a shock debuff to her opponents when using that attack, in addition to having a 70% chance to stun, especially because in terms of damage output, she doesn't really have a whole lot of better options. I also think that it would be interesting if she were to also activate a Widow's Bite that at the very least gives a shock debuff, if not a concussive stun type effect to the opponent whenever she has an evasion against them, because that would just kind of make her that much more efficient and especially if she activates that evasion right in the middle of using her as an attacker, you're not left as open, because typically, from my experience, especially where that evasion doesn't happen with a whole lot of frequency, you can evade attack in the middle of a combo and then still fall subject to the rest of the hits in the combo from your opponent. So not really something that's super great, especially where you're looking to maintain control of the situation of the fight, and that would just really kind of help turn the tides of that. I would also really love to see an overhaul to her special attacks in terms of how they're animated. Again, with this particular version of the character, you can really lean into that Widow's Bite mechanic, or you can take advantage of a lot of the other stealth type abilities that she has and can use against her opponents. So you don't have to base her entire kit around the Widow's Bite, but since it's already there, I'd love to see that incorporated a little bit more integrally into the way that this character behaves and performs. Now, I think that it's decent that there was a alteration to how the Subtlety ability works against her opponents, but the other change that I would really like to see happen there is if you do integrate all of these shock type debuffs into your special attacks, evasions, and other areas of the character's kit, I would love to see that play additionally into the ability accuracy reduction of the character to give her an opportunity to boost back up to that 100% reduction based off of however many shock charges are there, as well as potentially being able to refresh whatever shock debuffs you have on the opponent by landing a heavy attack, thus making the character a lot more involved and less of a hands-off or linear type playstyle character. Of course, you would still have that reduction against these. Of course, you would still have that reduction against the mutant opponents that would never really get it back up to 100% efficiency. And if you really wanted to make sure that she doesn't gain too much power in that type of a matchup, you can always include the contingency that those ability drops do not apply to mutant opponents, even though you can still get the debuffs to trigger on those opponents. So really a lot of things that could happen with Black Widow. Will they? Realistically, I honestly don't think so. But those are a couple of my ideas for things that I would like to see changed or added to the character and her design and or function. But what do you think? Do you think there are changes that need to be made to Black Widow? Do you think she needs to be overhauled entirely? Or do you like her just the way that she is? Be sure to let me know what your thoughts are in the comments down below. And if you've made it this far into the video, don't forget to drop that like. Thanks again for your time, and I hope that you have an absolutely fantastic rest of your day.